Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
So my book is finally out in the world. It came out in January. It's called Happy to Help, Adventures of a People Pleaser. And one of the things I've heard back is that the book is fun, but listening to me read it is particularly fun, especially if you're a listener of this podcast. So Libro.fm has given us a special chance to share with you one of the essays from Happy to Help, which you're going to hear right after this. Libro.fm lets you buy audiobooks from independent bookstores. So you're supporting local indies while you're listening to audiobooks on your phone. You can get a credit for $14.99 a month. You add credits whenever you need them. You can pause your membership whenever you want without losing your credits in audiobooks. It's a great way to support the independent book system and still get those audiobooks you like. So this is my favorite essay from Happy to Help. It's called Never Give Up. And we'll put the link in the show notes to get the audiobook on Libro.fm if you enjoy this preview. Thanks for listening.
Never give up. When my 3 children were still small, it was easy to imagine myself as the leader of all our family adventures, then and in the future that would come. I knew where we all were going and how we would get there. If they beat me across the pool, it was because I was letting them win. I think kids are often aware of this tacit arrangement, and they like it that way. With so much of their lives existing in the quadrant of the unknown, the bad things they don't even know about yet, children are usually content to have a grown-up there to hold their hand or tell them how high they're allowed to climb, that they can scooter just to the corner and then they have to stop and wait for mommy. It was easy to appear brave in my children's eyes. It was easy to feel brave when everything we did together seemed predictable and familiar. That all changed the winter that I was 40 and my children were between the ages of 3 and 7. The winter that my young children and I learned to ski. Despite having grown up an hour from the Pocono Mountains, despite telling myself I should take up the sport in my 8th grade diary, I'd gotten to midlife without ever having put on skis. It just wasn't something my family did. Neither of my parents knew how to ski, nor did the speech and debate types I hung out with in high school. But my husband, who grew up just 2 miles from where I did, went to a different high school, one that offered no-frills $20 ski club trips to Elk Mountain on Friday nights. He and his friends skied in jeans and had a ball. You taught yourselves? I asked. It seemed a little more complicated than that, but what did I know? It's easy, he said. You'll see. Everyone will get the hang of it in a day, and then we can all ski together for years. We'll be making memories. On this, we fervently agreed. If the kids would have fun doing it, it was worth our doing. Whether my husband or I got a thrill out of touching trucks or doing the corn maze at Pumpkin Town was beside the point. Our children enjoyed those things, so those were the things we did. I didn't exactly love the idea of adding an athletic activity to that mix, but that was for historical and personal reasons. Anything involving speed or strength or throwing or catching has always existed far outside my comfort zone. If you want to ruin my month, just tell me our next outdoor gathering will include a friendly volleyball game. And I've never needed the exhilaration of risk or danger to make my life more exciting. I'll go on the roller coaster, but I'll keep my hands inside the ride at all times. But I wanted my kids to have a slightly more carefree relationship to adventure than that. So in service of that end, I needed to step up and be fun mom. This was a low-stakes way for me to challenge the scaredy cat within. I would show my children how richly rewarding it was to try something new. I wouldn't be waving gaily to my menfolk from the back door, then wiping my hands on my apron as I watched them set off without me. I would be right there, participating in the family fun. There was even a good chance, my husband told me, that I'd become the skier in the family. That first day on the bunny slope, the scariest part was getting off the lift at the top of the hill. Bend your knees, lean forward just a little, let the seat push you, my husband told me, before heading off to the kids' area with the boys. It took me several tries to do it without the attendant having to pause the lift to assist me, but I could accept that embarrassment because the part that I expected to be hard, the skiing part, was going great. I'd just tip myself over the edge of the hill, balance myself over my skis, feel about 10 seconds of exhilaration, then have about 40 feet of nice flat terrain to bring me to a gradual and gentle stop. After about 30 times down, I thought I was Lindsey Vonn, thrilling to the feeling of the wind in my hair. Part of the lightness I felt may have been that my kids weren't with me. I hoped the boys were enjoying themselves as much as I was. I couldn't wait to see my family again and tell them I had done it. I hadn't fallen once. It seemed I was an athlete and adventurer after all. The following weekend, we returned to the same ski mountain. Just me, my husband, and our first grader. Our younger two kids stayed home with my in-laws, so the three of us could really shred. As soon as my 7-year-old and I were booted up and strapped in, I started push-striding back to the bunny slope. "No, this way," my husband said, calling me toward a different, longer lift line. "We're going to do a real hill." I tried to ignore my immediate feeling of dread. This was exactly why I hated being adventurous. As soon as you feel comfortable, people want you to ratchet up the level of risk. "I'm not ready," I wanted to protest. "Let's do the bunny slope some more." But my first grader was the opposite of frightened, yelling, "Come on, Mom!" as he trudged toward the line on his little skis. If my little boy wasn't scared, then why was I? If Dad said we were ready, then we definitely were. And so a real hill was what was going to happen next. I had my qualms, but I got in line. All I needed to do was get over my fears, and then it was going to be so much fun. While I was not aware of this at the time, the Professional Ski Instructors of America strongly recommend that new skiers take a few lessons from a licensed and bonded instructor before they attempt any sort of actual hill. Self-taught is insufficient, and whomever you came with probably isn't a good enough teacher either. As they explain on their website, friends don't let friends teach friends. If a Professional Ski Instructor of America is not available to you, then experts say it might be possible to learn from a non-professional. In a pinch, you might be able to learn a few tips from any number of competent strangers you encounter in the lift line. But under no circumstances, according to our nation's professional ski instructors, should one learn to ski from one's spouse, even if said spouse is a Professional Ski Instructor of America. To teach a romantic partner to ski is a mistake experienced instructors know to avoid, because such a heightened and anxiety-provoking forum makes yelling a far more likely outcome than learning. And for the new skier herself, learning from the person closest to her offers an additional risk, that her loved one's relationship-based nearsightedness might cause him to overlook that he has brought his life partner to the top of a ski run without her knowing two important things: how to turn and how to stop. As soon as the three of us reached the top of the hill that afternoon, a green run called Easy Street, my 7-year-old took off. Without fear, without poles, which is how kids ski. Probably because it appears much more dangerous to their mothers that way. I hadn't seen my child skiing until this moment, and his lack of hesitancy was the opposite of reassuring. "Wait!" I yelled. It seemed to me he was going far too quickly, his little red helmet already barely visible in the distance. "He's got this," my husband said. "Look at him go." "Okay, you ready?" He gestured for me to proceed. "Ladies first." As I stood looking down this precipitous drop, unable to see either my child or the bottom of the hill, I began to sense my spouse had perhaps made an error in judgment. "I don't know what I'm doing," I said, frozen in place. Sure you do, my husband said. I didn't move. Okay, he said, no problem. Although I could see he was rapidly recalibrating his own expectations. We'll do this together, okay? We're going to work our way across the hill sideways. Good. Keep your toes pointed in, nice and I didn't hear anything he said after that because as soon as I moved from where I had been frozen in place, I was suddenly flying down the hill, also at top speed. Snowplow! Snowplow! My husband was yelling behind me, which would have probably been a helpful suggestion if I had any idea what snowplow meant or how one might perform such a maneuver. Then I could hear him yelling, not French fries, pizza! And that I could translate. He was telling me to form a triangle with my skis. I'd seen other people doing that on the bunny slope and wondered why they were going so slowly. This isn't even scary, I had thought, whizzing past them on the 10% incline. What losers. Now, as I whizzed down this much longer and steeper slope, I was unable to redirect my skis from their dread purpose. My skis were in charge, and both were pointed directly downhill. As I passed the speed of sound, I tried to remember what people who knew how to ski looked like when they were skiing. The best example my mind's eye could muster was the agony of defeat guy from Wide World of Sports. Bending my knees, I crouched down just like him, which had the predictable but unfortunate effect of making me go even faster. I knew I was in danger. If I couldn't slow down, I definitely had to stop. Just before I spectacularly face-planted, I managed to tuck sideways and throw myself down next to a tree. My husband skied up next to me. Everything's going to be fine, he said, although I could tell that his miscalculation of my abilities now seemed as grave to him as it did to me. Let's get up, he added, rather optimistically, since I had no idea how to do that either, and I was intending to cling to precious life by lying there in that snowbank for as long as possible. Then I realized, if my 7-year-old had reached the bottom of the run without grave injury, which now seemed by no means a foregone conclusion, my little boy was down there all alone, right now, wondering where his parents were, getting more frightened by the moment. I started scrambling around in the snow, my husband hoisting me up by my armpits. Hold on, he said, your skis are pointing downhill. Got it, I thought, as I accelerated away from safety once more. That was how I made it down the mountain that day, achieving dangerous speed for about 20 seconds at a time, then dumping myself off to the side just before I tore an ACL, then waiting for my husband to assist me back up onto my skis while I shouted at him that this was all his fault. It was imagining my son's peril that was really fueling my panic. I wouldn't let my first grader take off alone at Disney World or anywhere else for that matter. So why was this considered acceptable on a ski slope? If someone were going to kidnap a child, didn't the bottom of a ski hill offer the most obvious of bounties? Finally, amid a full-blown anxiety attack, I lay there in the snow and I told my husband I was done. He would have to go ahead without me, first to find our son, then to commandeer a snowmobile to come get me. In response, my husband gently suggested that the ski mountain's rescue teams were probably not usually dispatched to the bottom half of a hill they had named Easy Street. We somehow made it safely to the bottom, just 25 minutes behind our son, and there he was, waiting for us, gazing hopefully uphill in his red helmet. Well, I was a little worried, he admitted. I was starting to be. But with just a few tater tots in the lodge, he was set nicely back to rights. I, on the other hand, was thoroughly traumatized and swore, nursing my tepid foam cup of Swiss Miss, that I would never, ever strap on those vice-like boots again. On the next snowy Saturday morning, when I stayed in my pajamas, my child said that he preferred to do the same. His younger brother, always happy to do whatever his older sibling did, said he didn't want to go skiing either. Everyone was happy about this except my husband. You can't just quit, he said, after pulling me out of earshot of our children. I explained that I was doing just that. While I took a grim pride in having survived the worst, I would not be heading back to Easy Street in this lifetime. If you don't go, the boys won't want to go either, he protested. This too was fine with me. Skiing was far too dangerous an activity for any sensible person to consider. But my husband was not about to abide 3 quitters in one family. Okay, I know that was rough, he said, but it won't always be like that, which is exactly why you can't stop now. You can't let that have been your last skiing experience. He assured me that I'd enjoy it far more if I gave it another shot, maybe took a lesson this time. He promised me that it really would click and fall into place, that skiing would turn into great fun. All I had to do was keep going. All I had to do was allow our non-refundable plane tickets to Utah, rather than my fears, define what was possible. 2 months later, there I was, staggering across the snows of the West in boots of lead to drop our 3-year-old daughter off for her own first lesson on a hill, so barely a hill, they called it Candyland. Independent and fearless since birth, my youngest child headed off with a friendly, goggled stranger and a half-dozen of her peers without so much as a backward glance. My husband had already taken our 2 sons for their own lesson, after my having insisted they be properly trained in the life-saving snowplow and pizza methodologies, while I would have 2 hours instruction of my own. By then, I'd be having a ball, my husband assured me, as I wrestled 3 young children into long underwear and ski pants. I had specifically requested I be matched with a teacher who had compassion for the reluctant adult ski learner. My instructor turned out to be a wind-burned, wizened older man named Tex, who was transparently less than thrilled to be spending the morning with such a fraidy lady. As we began, I was mostly distracted by the presence of my preschooler. Since I had termed myself a true beginner, Tex and I were also hanging out on Candyland right next to her. Out of the corner of my eye, she learned to ski a hula hoop obstacle course as I knock-kneed it down Candyland with none of her finesse. Tex was disgusted. "Try having a little fun," he said. "Come on now, you haven't smiled at all yet." This was true, but only because gritting my teeth was a crucial component of my new skiing method, which had evolved from brace for impact to something more like maximize drag coefficients. I had learned how to lock my skis into a pizza shape and zigzag across Candyland painfully slowly. I was in a full sweat from the considerable effort both to slow my skis and to avoid collision with the 40 freestyling toddlers paying absolutely no heed to where they were going, which is admittedly what they usually do, just at lower speeds. "Well, okay then," Tex said. "We'll go up just a little higher. Get away from all the kids if they're distracting you." He was doing his best to chit-chat and keep me moving forward. "Now remind me how many kids you have," he said, as our legs dangled off the chairlift. I'm 3. The chairlift hadn't been as high off the ground in the Poconos. I craned my neck looking downhill from my daughter, wondering how many collisions on Candyland had occurred due to inattentive skiers dropping from above. "What are you so worried about?" Tex said. "Relax. Enjoy the view." I was gripping the handrail for dear life. "I'm sorry," I admitted. I'm really scared right now." "You're afraid of this?" Tex snorted. "This itty-baby chairlift?" "Yes, Tex," I wanted to say. "Yes, I am. And your ridicule is making me feel so much better about that." The chairlift was frightening, and so was the rapidly approaching dismount ahead. All of this was frightening. None of this was fun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. After Tex saw me safely off the chairlift, I paused to see who had texted me. It was my husband, letting me know that our 5-year-old had just skied his first black diamond. It was me. I wasn't skiing, it was me. If my 5-year-old could master a mountain in 2.5 hours, then I needed to get over myself. When things get hard, we push through, I told myself. We conquer the dragon, and we emerge holding the gleaming chalice of grit. I redoubled my efforts, and by the time I bid farewell to Tex an hour later, I had learned to turn by jerkily skidding on the tilted edges of my skis, and to stop by leaning my body uphill while praying. My husband and 3 children, ready to meet me for lunch at the bottom of the hill, watched my shaky final approach. "Yay, Mommy!" my 5-year-old shouted. "Now we can all ski together!" I managed a smile, but only because I had earned an hour off the mountain, or at least the time it took until everyone's chicken nuggets were finished. After lunch, it was time for forced family skiing. I rode the chairlift with my 7-year-old to the top of Little Baldy. Nothing about it felt little to me, but my oldest child's enthusiasm was infectious. "You're going to have so much fun higher up the mountain, Mom," he yelled, "because the hill is way longer." But sweetheart, I don't want the hill to be longer, I said. Every time I get to the bottom of Candyland, I can't believe I didn't hurt myself. How many times did you ski before you stopped being afraid? My child regarded me blankly. This was the same child that I'd had to repeatedly reassure just a few years earlier that there was absolutely no way the grumpy old troll was going to harm Dora the Explorer, let alone him. The grumpy old troll isn't even mean, I would explain. His riddles are in no way dangerous. Look at him. He's just grumpy. But I could see in my child's eyes that he was beyond convincing. It was of minimal solace that his mother, for whatever reason, couldn't see what was so clearly unsafe. 2 hours later, I still hadn't fallen. I'd even smiled a few times skiing some basically horizontal greens with my 3-year-old, while my older kids did moguls and tree runs, whatever those were. With the longest day of my life almost behind me, all that remained between me and the parking lot was a green run. I could do those now, named, encouragingly, Success. Come on, Mom, my older son yelled. Catch up with us. We'll all finish together. The sun was getting lower in the sky and the snow was slushy. A crunchy layer of ice was forming on top, making a scraping sound against my skis that I was trying to ignore. And when we came around the bend, the steepest hill I had seen yet was before me. Whoever had named this hill Success and deemed it a green run had long ago lost touch with what a new skier might perceive as easy. The mountain was covered in ice, packed with skiers racing to the rental return, and far, far beyond my capability. There was nowhere to go but down. I had never been, still have never been, so afraid in my life. Leave me alone, I screamed at my husband when he tried to coach me through my panic. As I watched my children fly down ahead of me, I was scared for them, exhausted for me, and ashamed. I was all wrong. I carved my way down the mountain in a painfully slow zigzag, no longer caring if anyone thought I was brave. I was certainly not. I had survived Success, but with none of the happiness my children felt, none of the joy they'd only wanted to share with me. If those who can't teach, then I'd be a heck of a ski instructor. Here's what I tell my students. It's harder to go down the hill slowly than it is to go quickly. If you don't fall once in a while, you won't get any better. If your hands hurt from gripping the poles, you're holding on too tightly. And, most important, it's way more fun to be fearless. I held all these truths to be self-evident. I simply could not apply their wisdom to myself. And how was I ever going to catch up to my children? They were already growing impatient with me, already telling me to go faster, already exhibiting free-willing skills I wasn't sure I could ever approximate. Our experiences were already too different. It was already too late. I told all of this to my husband under the covers that night, knowing he'd tell me what I needed to hear to keep going, even though I didn't want to, because I had to, because I needed to, because beating the things that scare us is how we grow. And then, just before he turned off the light, my husband said, well, you don't have to keep doing this, you know? Maybe you just quit. People who truly love to ski love skiing more than just about anything else. On the mountain, they achieve what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi famously termed a flow state, a complete adrenaline-fueled absorption that is something close to bliss. The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times, Csikszentmihalyi wrote. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. In the service of future flow, in the service of never ever giving up, I might have spent many more frightening afternoons locking those heavy boots onto my feet and staring down success. Perhaps I was almost to the other side, about to accomplish something difficult and therefore worthwhile. I will never know, because while I skied one more day after that and discovered, as the sun set over Baldy Mountain, that I still hated it, I have delighted in the freedom of never going back. If getting good at something is hard, Being good at something is easy. Had I kept at it, the story might have ended where it feels like it should, with my feeling the exhilaration of freedom, instead of the ridiculous fear that Tex and my first grader were unable to comprehend. But instead of overcoming my anxiety, I overcame my fear of stopping, which held a euphoria even better than getting good at skiing. The joy of accepting my limitations and weaknesses as forever unfixable. I wanted to like skiing because my husband and children loved it, because it felt like I'd be disappointing them if I stopped. I wondered what had changed my husband's mind, that quitting might not be so terrible. Then I wondered why I hadn't allowed myself to change my own mind first. We don't have to keep doing things we hate until someone else gives us permission to put them down. My kids still ski, of course, because they love it, and because they take their safe arrival at the bottom of the mountain for granted. While I wait for them at the bottom, I tromp around in the snow, I read by the fire, and not even a small part of myself feels guilty for not joining them. My quitting affected my children far less than I had feared. Skiing with me was only slowing them down. As my children grew, they stopped looking furtively at me to see whether the grumpy old troll was dangerous, whether Donald Duck was approachable, whether it was okay to try something new. As my children continued to grow, what their mother would do in any given situation is about the last thing they take into their personal risk consideration. This is exactly as it should be. If I've taught my children anything really useful, it's that saying no can sometimes be its own kind of bravery. Hoping we don't get hurt is no kind of a way to live.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 45% off site-wide, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.